Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and I've returned this week with another outstanding guest. Today's guest is one of the most energetic, just high energy, high octane people in town. He's a public servant who served us many years on the school board. He's a retired teacher, a coach, a businessman, a dad, a husband, you name it. He's a man of many talents and many opinions, and he's always a lot of fun to have around. He's a very bright guy with bright ideas. So with no further ado, I bring to you our guest, Randy Bush. Randy,
Parker,
welcome to the show.
Parker, what's going on, man?
Good
Hey,
to see
you making that introduction, and I was somewhere, and my wife was with me, and this person went on and on. It's like you said, and she leaned over and said, "I thought you was a speaker." So,
people hear me say that and they think he must not know Randy that well, right?
yeah, she says, "I thought you was a speaker, so maybe I am." You don't know me like that.
Hey,
but yeah,
you gotta love having good women who keep you humble. You know, it's funny. I'm going over to LSU Law School next week to teach trial advocacy for the first time. I just joined their faculty this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I'm telling my wife about it the other day, and I'm all excited about, and I'm like, this, and this. And she's like, honey, you got carpool, you got this and that. It's like, professor, let's talk about what your real obligations are. So
yeah, forget about LSU, man.
Right. And no matter where you go, somebody, if you're lucky enough to have a good bride like you are and I am, it's a blessing. Man. But they'll keep you humble. Well, why don't we start off, Randy? Of course, I know a lot about you. I've known you for years and years. A lot of people around here do, but not everybody who watches our show probably knows you, or some may not know anything about you. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just kick it off with you telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, first thing, let's talk about your show, dude, because it's really, really good. You've had some great people out on the show, and James Square, Philip Banks, and Kevin Rayford. I can list a bunch.
All great ones, yeah.
But I wonder why it took you so long to get me. But that's another story.
I'm going to blame your cousin Philip, It's one person per family, and he went to high school with me, so he had dibs.
Yeah. The truth is you've asked me a couple times, but our schedules just could never meet up. So, hey, you talking about Philip, I'd rather tell this story about him. He was younger, and we were hunting. And he gets there to this store that's probably built in 1800, and he pulls out this debit card.
Oh, come on.
Think about that. And the lady goes, "On what card?"
Right,
so for a week, Philip had no money. All he brought was a debit card. And everywhere we went,
that's funny. The richest guy any of us knew probably had no money all week. That was probably, remember, Philip, he didn't just get a baseball letter jacket. He got an academic letter jacket, and he's a smart cookie. He probably knew he'd have you buying his food all week if he pulled that stunt.
So, yeah, our moms are sisters. So, yeah, Phil's my first cousin. He knows how much I love him and care for him. But Parker, really, this show's been about lots of people in Ponchatoula that have been so successful. And, and I think about all the guests that you have and all the young guys and young women like you that are like, you look at generations and my parents, my grandparents, and me, because we're all from Ponchatoula. And then I look at your generation, man, y'all are doing very well. And it's, and I'm very proud to be your friend. And I know there's a lot of people left on this show for you to have that are successful. Yes, I'm a Ponchatoula guy. And
thank you.
And I left there, and went to college and got a degree. Went to Livingston Parish for 10 years, and that's where I became a coach at Albany High School.
Oh, really? My wife works in the Livingston school system.
Yeah.
And
I hope just for a little while longer.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get her back this way. But my daddy taught over there too. He was a coach at Marpaw. So that's neat. We had Mr. Reggie Peavy, one of the most legendary coaches in this area has ever had. One of the finest men Ponchatoula's ever had, had too. And so we have all these connections to the Livingston school system. So tell us about that. You coached at Albany. When did that happen, and how'd you like it?
I'm going to go back a little while. I was walking on the main street of Hammond, and Dr. Rodney Taylor from the Talbot Baptist, kind of stopped me one day. We're having a conversation. He said, "Randy, you live right here. You're close. Go to college, get your degree, become an educator." And I always wanted to, thank him. I still remember that conversation, and I did. And Virgil Allen was the personnel director for Livingston Parish, for Tangier Hole Parish back in the day.
Okay.
And I student taught at Albany Middle School under Janice Bernard, who was a principal who I still see from time to time, and assistant principal Melvin Wild, and Melvin's son Boyd's the police chief there now. And so I went to this teacher, recruitment day, and Virgil was there, and he said, man, I really don't have a lot for you, but I tell you what, let's go to Livingston Parish and get you a job where you're at. I did. I stayed at the junior high 2 years, of high school 8 years, and Melanie Monastery gave me a call one day and said, Randy, you could come to Ponchatoula High School and be a teacher. And so next thing I know, Coach Thompson and I were sitting at his desk at Ponchatoula High School. Right. And he said, man, I'm going to hire you. He was a teacher coach when I was there. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you a real quick story about him and Bill Hawkins, our head football coach. Parker, I was a 16-year-old captain of the defensive football team, and we were playing, and Coach Thompson couldn't make it that night because he had heart trouble. Mm-hmm. So we played. The game didn't go well the first half. It went good the second half. We won. And Bill Hawkins and A.J. Bacher, the principal, kind of said, hey, let's donate.
You talk about local legends. We're three local legends deep into this story.
Yeah, let's dedicate this game ball to Coach Thompson. And I remember going to his house, and I was still 16 because I did turn 17 in November, and I watched Bill Hawkins and Lawrence Thompson hug each other and tell each other they loved each other, and they were crying. And Parker, Lawrence Thompson was a black man and Bill Hawkins was a white man. And they taught us as players back in 1977 that people are just people. You treat everybody the same. You love every man, not for the color of his skin, but who he is to you. And I thank God for Coach Hawkins and Coach Thompson and A.J. Bacher, people who took us as kids and said, you treat everybody equal. And I remember that night today.
Yeah. And they led us through hard times. I mean, those are the leaders, especially Mr. Bacher in particular, being principal at the time, that led us through integration. And you're right; they set such a fine example. And your story started with Virgil Allen, and I went through high school when Mr. Allen was still principal. My senior year was his last year, and Coach Thompson was his right-hand man. So we got to see that transition happen. And you're right; there was this genuine respect and caring, from man to man there. And Coach Hawkins was still in action at that point, retired as a coach, but as a teacher. Yeah,
and we had some good role models.
We have these wonderful heroes, and that's one area where we've been blessed over the years, whether, especially on the coaching front, whether lately we've had all this great glory. We had Coach Willie on the program here recently. He's outstanding. Yeah. Coach Hank's a winningest guy ever, basically. I know. But we have this very distinguished history of great coaches who are great men, going back to Coach Shield and Bill Johnson and all these great guys, from 50 plus years ago. Yeah.
What happened is that if that moment wouldn't have happened, if it could have been anything different, that players were players, we were a family. When I graduated, months later, and stayed out of school 3 or 4 years, so I went to college. But who knew that night would help form my heart and my mind about young people? Because I spent 30 years now I'm a school board member. This is like the 30th year I've been involved in education. And we live in such a diverse community with, different denominations and races and political parties. And I've had so many meetings with so many different people. So I thank God in our community. Now, we're not perfect. Those guys weren't perfect.
No community is. No person is.
But really, we get along fairly well considering what you see around us in the world in different areas. Yeah. And so being a Ponchatoulaan, as Julian Dufresne would say, right. I'm proud to be a Ponchatoulaan. Strader and Johnny live in Magnolia Trace, and I live in River
So, folks, he's talking about Strader Dufresne Ciatat and her husband, Johnny, my old classmate. Two great folks and a great educator in Strader. Sorry to cut you off, Randy.
No, that's right.
Everybody knows who you're talking about.
I'm thinking everybody knows these people, right? Well, I live in River Ranch. They live in Magnolia Trace, so we're like neighbors across the street.
Right.
And then Corey Dufresne lives in a field behind my mom's house in Pumpkin Center. So it's like we both of them have neighbors.
Well, it's kind of funny. They lived, where their mom still lives, Miss Janet, on Barringer, or right there at the corner at Barringer. They lived when we were kids, and we were buddies with them, Corey in particular. So Bree and I used to ride our bike through this little path that went through what was then woods, and is now the Timber Creek subdivision. And they had a little hill back there you'd ramp your bike off of. It was called Playboy Hill by all the local boys. And anyway, it's kind of funny because my family's about to move back there, and the trail that ran to Corey's house when I was a kid runs through our yard now, or our lot. So
well, my uncle,
it's cool, but that's such a great family. They've been around forever, and they really serve the community well.
And my mom's sister Nancy's Phil's mom, and our uncle is Milton Hill, which lives right there.
Well, a neighbor too. Mr. Milton, he's a dear friend of my parents. And the joke in my family is that he must be my real dad because of stature. You know me well, and I'm not tall, right? And neither is Pawpaw Milton. And
well, tell me about your dad. I saw your dad at Bree's golf tournament. Man, it looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah, we're blessed. He's really on the comeback trail, health wise. But I remember Mr. Milton used to come into mom and dad's house before work, and they drink coffee together. And sometimes I'd be there watching cartoons or whatever. He'd come rap me on the head and say, "Come on, son, you coming to work with me today?" But that's a great little family, the Hill family, great big family rather.
Yeah.
He's got some great sons. So what I want to do, Randy, we've got some comments from friends of ours here that have chimed in. Ryan Griffin, my friend who serves with me on the TARC board, says, "What's up, Randy? How you doing?"
Hey, Ryan Griffin, I'm doing good, buddy.
Ryan's a great guy. Ryan, thank you for chiming in, man. It's good to hear from you. And one of our great former guests of the show, Mandy Franks Braywick. Mandy, thank you for chiming in. She says, Randy's such a great guy. Every time y'all talk on the phone, it's a great conversation.
Yeah, I talked to her recently.
Yeah. Well, I believe it because both of you guys are chatterboxes and have a way with words.
It's nice talking to her.
Mandy, I saw your brother at a restaurant a week or two ago. He was eating with your parents. And anyway, I've asked him to be on the show. We don't have a date yet. But speaking of great coaches, former coach Justin Franks is going to be on the show to talk.
Oh, cool.
Another cool Ponchatoula guy. So, folks, if you've got something fun to say, of course, we keep it positive and encouraging here on our show. Feel free to chime in. You can put a comment in down below, and I'll do my best to get to them as I did for Ryan and Mandy. So, Randy, we're talking here, you say 30-plus years in education. Let's talk about what the experience was like at the student level before we get into your years of teaching, coaching, and, eventually making policy through the school board. What was it like being a little kid in Ponchatoula when you were coming up in the 70s?
I had this discussion last night at Beatico Baptist Church with Glenn Sanchez, who was a teacher at Vineyard the last year or so of his career, and I was assistant principal. And we talked about a man named Joe Bosch. And I think Joe Bosch taught me in like the 6th grade. So when I went to Vineyard as an assistant principal, I looked on the wall one day, and it was covered with paint numerous times, but Joe Bosch's name tag was still on the wall. And obviously, cool. I was probably 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
And someone said, "Well, what school did you go to?" Parker, I don't remember what these schools were called. Was it always called Tucker? Now I know Perrin is a kindergarten, but back in those days, it was a junior high school. And I went to Perrin Junior High, which is now the kindergarten. And of course, we graduated from I think they still call it the Cypress Bowl there, in town, the junior high now.
Right.
But as a student in Ponchatoula, I'm like the rest of us. You say you didn't graduate first in your class, you graduated second in law school.
I was blessed to have really good grades. All I really cared about, I'm one of 3 boys that went to LSU Law, and I'm just glad that I had the best grades of the 3. So I can rub that into my brothers for the rest of their life. They're far more successful than I am now, but once upon a time, I was the #1 ranked Layrisson, and that was the bragging right.
I might have graduated second from last in my class. But, really, we had teachers there, like Kim Zabby was there as an art teacher, Bill Hawkins. And, we had such, in Lawrence Thompson, we had such great teachers. And really, Tommy Robertson, somebody, comes to mind. And, you know, we had great people, great teachers. There's nothing like having A.J. Bacher as your principal. And he wasn't a very big guy, but I'm going to tell you something. He treated everybody equal. And, you know, the day we played Hammond, because, you know, Hammond had beat us 20 years or so, and I was a senior. And I remember out in the courtyard playground there, AJ was there, and we were talking. And I just told him flat out, I said, Mr. Bacher, we're going to kick their ass tonight, I promise you. You know, and he said in that moment, son, I hope y'all do that. and we won 7-6, but it was like the first time that we had beat Hammond in, you know, many, many, many years. And of course, I still get asked to speak at the Hammond week when we play Ponchatoula plays Hammond, you know, at the fire station. And let's don't leave that bunch out. Our volunteer fire department is incredible.
Yeah.
You know,
heroes. And
I mean, I just
starting at the top with a great chief we have in Stormy Dean Joyner, who comes from a long line of great firefighters.
Great
father, the late chief, his brother, the late captain, but it's not a one-man show. There are a ton of great guys there, including your rotten cousin, Philip Bankson, that we joked about earlier.
Yeah. But, you know, I'll bring that yearbook to that meeting to inspire that team. And I'll open up, and there's a page in the yearbook that you see the fans jumping over the stadium going onto the field. And so, you know, I know I'm an old guy, but still, you think about these memories that you made as being a Green Wave.
Sure, and, absolutely. Well, they stick with you for life, and that's why I kind of ask everyone that comes on the show what their experience was like. Because Ponchatoula High School in particular is the great common denominator of our community. You know, it wasn't until recently there were even alternatives. You know, we didn't have a private high school, you know, nearby. You know, now St. Thomas is around, and, you know, so long story short, we're a one school town.
Exactly.
And these people you mentioned are just legends. I mean, AJ Bacher is somebody I think about so often I couldn't even name it. I can tell you this today. I can tell you exactly when I thought of him, and it wasn't when we just talked about. When I went to Rotary today at noon for our weekly meeting, we inducted a new member, and that's great little tradition. And we talked, but long story short, for the first 20 years of my Rotary membership, until Mr. AJ passed, he was always the guy that gave the new member their Rotary pin, talked about, you know, our motto of service above self, the purpose of the club. He would educate them on the history. So that was just one little angle of where he was a fixture, in addition to his career as principal and chairman of North Oaks. But, you know, we got to keep talking about these legends that we saw come up. Yeah. Because what little good I got, I've owed to others, starting in my own house and, you know, of course, God, but the great people that have led this community. So it means a lot to me when you mention heroes like Mr. AJ and all these other great educators you have.
Well, you know, I spoke at that Hammond Ponchatoula event. And my son was an 8th grader, I think, that year. And so I invited some of these players from the 1952 team, and there were 4 of them. I mean, trying to get them like Bobby Van Rankin, Charles Morris, Bill Hawkins, and probably the greatest athlete that ever played here in Ponchatoula is Huey Hustler.
Wow, yeah, he was a legend.
And those 4 men were there that night. And it was really great to see them. And I think there was 1 or 2 maybe still alive. And that 1952 team I think it played for the state championship and got beat. And so that year, Ponchatoula was undefeated at 10-0 or 9-0, fixed to play Hammond and be district champs. And, you know, Christian Campbell was a quarterback, and we thought we would win the state championship. Got beat in the second round. But, you know, these that raising that flag on July 4th, which I go to every year, the Minutemen in town, I think American Legion Post 47, who raises the flags in the cemetery on 3 or 4 times a year. You know, these events that happen in our town are just incredible. And to support veterans, and of course, veterans is a big deal to me, and the Quad Area vets out with Wallace Sibley. And he see that flag. And if you hadn't seen this video that just came out, I think Trent Anthony put it out. It's a history of the flag of the Betty Rosses, I think they called them Betsy Rosses. And it's a short video, but it tells about how that thing was. You know, when I think was it Mayor was it Mayor Gideon? I think maybe that of course that's another great name.
I was a little kid, and I'm not going to sit here in front like I was paying attention to civics when I was running the guys we mentioned earlier, Corey Dufresh and I. We, even though the statute of limitations is run, I can't tell you all we were up to, but it wasn't flag raising. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and it was that story is incredible.
But you're right. We had these great local leaders, and some are still like Mr. Ronnie Perrin, who I think I want to say he's been active and maybe leading that charge from.
He's on that video. He's on the video too.
I'd love to check that out because I love Trent and respect him a ton. He's a great guy. I believe he himself is a veteran and certainly a great community leader and business owner. Known him for years and years. His cousin Britt's one of my best friends. So that's neat. So let's go back a little bit because I want to get the full picture of your story. So you have this kind of what sounds like an idyllic and frankly, typical for many people, Ponchatoula childhood, where these local icons form, really strong impressions on you and you learn a ton from them. But you mentioned you didn't go straight into college. So, I think that might surprise some people, especially from like the education angle, because a lot of educators go straight from being students to being teachers sometimes. But I thought I heard you say you took a few years off before you went to college. Tell us about that next chapter in life when you get out of PHS. You don't have Mr. Bodker on a daily basis to guide you with the other teachers. What'd you do between then and getting back into school and taking the next step?
It was typical high school. They wanted me to take, I think, English 4, and I said, I'll never go to college. I don't need that. Mm-hmm. Got out and got in the workforce and just mainly construction work and
real work. What'd you learn there? Let's talk about that because you and I are sitting in the air condition right now on a hot July day. But what'd you learn working hard outside in construction?
It was hot. It was hot and it didn't pay as much as I thought, but a guy named Bobby Hill, who was a superstar at Hammond High state championship winners, went to Southeastern, played, had a construction business, built portable buildings in Albany, and hired me. And he had a teaching degree, and so they hired him at Natalbany Baptist to come teach and be the football coach. Mm-hmm. And so he asked me to come help him be an assistant football coach because he knew I played and we were friends, and I did. And that's where I met Rodney Taylor. And that's when, it was like 4 years after I got out of high school. And I went and took the ACT test for the first time. And I don't want to talk about my score, Parker, so don't ask me. But I didn't have to take remedial classes.
Okay.
Now my son made a 28, and he goes through high school, never makes a B. He graduates from Ponchatoula High, plays football, academic All-State, gets his award on his Super.
We call that taken after his mama, where I can.
Yeah, it wasn't me. And so I go to college and graduate in 4 years, and immediately go to work in education, and never look back. And matter of fact, when Melanie called me about a job opening in Ponchatoula, I went and talked there, and I was a teacher at Ponchatoula High School, and Virgil again pops up and said, "Man, we need administrators. Go to school and get your master's degree." Mm-hmm. So I ended up leaving education, thought I wanted to do something different, went to work at the lab school at Southeastern Lab School.
Okay.
And smelled all that success, all those young kids going to college, and it brought back all these memories. And I just said, I'm going to get my master's, and got my master's in administration and my plus 30, and got an administration job in Ponchatoula.
And did you say you were an administrator at Vineyard?
I went to DC Leeds first, okay. and then I went to Martha Vineyard for 4 or 5 years as an assistant principal. Okay. And I ended up going to Hammond.
That school's got a special place in my heart because we lived next door to Wink Vineyard growing up.
Wow.
And he was a true legend. Of course, the late former principal of Martha Vineyard School. And he was basically our adopted pawpaw. He didn't have grandkids, but we didn't have a pawpaw. And he fixed every flat tire on our bikes and took us fishing. And along with Mr. Bodker, that was his fishing buddy. Yeah. And in fact, I think when he passed, he left one of his boats to Mr. AJ Bodker and one of his boats to my daddy. And cherished kind of family heirloom. And anyway, just great people. But it's always I didn't get to go to that school. I tutored there when I was in high school. But every time I pass there, I think of him and his legacy there. So It must have been a special, place to work. Is that right?
Yeah, it was it was a great school. And back in the day when I was still involved as far as an employee in our school system, it wasn't like it is today.
What do you mean by that?
It was easier. I mean, really, children were better than they were today. That we had our issues. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see the disrespect and the discipline issues. And I was being interviewed, the other day about hoodies, and I said I taught school. I was assistant principal. I was in Ponchatoula. I was in Hammond schools. I mean, I saw the most at-risk students in our parish and to the wealthiest students in our parish. I don't remember a kid wearing a hoodie ever.
Yeah,
but now
kind of a new thing.
Now you can't function without a hoodie. It's like an emotional support piece of clothes or something,
What do you attribute that difference to? Having kind of been around as an educator,
I don't know. I'm not sure. I see you have a beard. I wear a beard in the winter. I don't care if high school kids wear beards. I don't care if they wear stud earrings. Some of this stuff just doesn't bother me, and it really doesn't bother the school. But somehow or another, hoodies has turned into a way to be distracted in the classroom. And I'm sorry. And even that's not why we're going to school anyway, to wear hoodies. But it just got to that point to where the teachers and administrators spoke really loud and clear. If you could take them away, it would save me 1,000 times a day saying, take off your hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the good students saying, well, you're punishing everybody for the few. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you something. Sometimes you tell a story and I tell a story, but the truth is kind of in the middle. So I wouldn't believe everything a student tells me that happened in school.
People say there's three sides to every story.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
speaking of stories, let me throw one comment in here because we've got more people chiming in here. And this is one of my favorite people in town, Trisha Nicholas, who my little boys just love. I mean, how do they not love the candy ice cream lady? But they love her from her days as an educator when she worked at Strawberry Castle Preschool. But she says, hey, guys, I learned so much watching your shows. And she says she loves Ponchatoula history. So, Trisha, thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's fun hearing some history from Randy. So sorry to interrupt the hoodie talk there. We can continue with that.
No, I think we
positive and encouraging comments come in. I love to share them.
Hey, let's skip the hoodies.
Are eager to hear, more of a political debate type show. That's just not what we do here. This is probably our 75th show. And if you watch the others, you'll see this is not a place where we dig real deep into politics and debate and controversy. So folks who are asking for those type of questions, just, know that that's not normally where we go. But so, Randy, we're talking about, kind of education, your experience back as a student, your years moving from that into becoming an educator, getting all this extra education that allowed you to ascend into administration, to be a vice principal, assistant principal, rather, all this. What are some lessons you learned along the way as you transition from a young teacher to somebody whose job it was to, teach young teachers and oversee them? What are some things you see that you feel like are lessons you learned that would either be helpful to people that are about to go back to school and teach kids, or like in my case, parent kids that are getting taught, or, administrators? What are some things you learned along the way in education that you think could help our viewers if they heard?
I want to mention her name because you're talking about education, and Diane Milton.
Yeah, she great or what? She's the best.
She has taught, and she was a school teacher one time in the public school.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But having that educational facility, Strawberry Castle, that she has, she is definitely one of the leading educators in our town. And
absolutely.
What she's done for many.
And I begged her many times to come on the show.
Oh, really?
I'm going to get her. I'm going to eventually convince her. It'll take me a while.
Yeah,
I have to use my kids to do it. She loves my boys. But let's take a moment to give them props, because Diane Milton and her school, Strawberry Castle Preschool, is a special place. I've had two boys go through there. My younger boy's in his last year, or going into his last year there now. And it's a great family affair. She and her husband, Russell, do a great job up top. And then her daughters, Melanie and Michelle, are phenomenal, in the classroom and administration. I had the privilege of going to, school with one of them all the way up, Melanie. And I live next to Michelle, the other. My boys will gladly tell you that Michelle's their favorite person. They'll take her over us any day. But they're great. They do a great job with that. And I'm glad you mentioned that because education starts at the preschool level. Study
great family.
Tell us
great
about
program.
That is. Yeah.
I mean, we're as a public school person, and I say public school person, you know, we owe her so much for, you know, because I know it's hard. I know it's hard to run a business, and she's been around for so many years. But, you know, you talk about things that I've learned. You know, I think now that it's over, and I had a really long conversation with a former student of mine last night, and, you know, the people who come up to you now who said, Mr. Bush, I had you in class, and you would say this, or you would do that, or you would teach us that, and, you know, and I go, you know, I really don't remember. It's been so long. You were like 10 or whatever you were, and now you're 40, and it goes. But I think that's, to me, that's what it's about. You know, you go back, but then again, so many heartbreaks. You know, with a 10-year-old boy in your office asking you a question. You know, Mr. Bush, why doesn't my dad love me? You know, and I remember that conversation now. Or going to the classroom because they said,
how do you handle that? How do you even approach a conversation like that? I'd be
actually, I did something that probably you'd get fired for today, but I would pray a lot with these little children, and I'd say, I don't know why, and I can tell you his name. I remember his name. I remember like it happened yesterday, and I said, man, I don't know why, but you know, you don't have to grow up like this. You know, other people do love you. We care about you here at school, and you know, and there were sometimes you just had to cry with these families at these meetings, and you'd hear the sorrow and heartbreak that they went through. But, you know, a teacher said, Mr. Bush, we're going on a field trip and he don't want to leave. You got to come do something about it. So I get in the room and, you know, he's just got his hands on the desk and he's just clenching. You could tell his face is red. And I said, man, what you doing? We're going on a field trip. He said, Mr. Bush, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not leaving. My dad says he's going with me and he's coming and I know it. And I'm not leaving until he gets here. And of course, we all knew his dad wasn't coming.
Right.
And it's those moments that you think about our school employees, whether it's cafeteria workers or secretaries or custodians or teachers or administrators. And man, it's just more than going and teaching what's going on in these walls every day. And some of the stories that you hear, even back in my day, would break your heart. And even now, it's even worse as far as the brokenness that's out in the world.
You know, you see these school employees and they come at all levels. You're right. It begins when the kid's picked up by the bus that morning.
The bus drivers.
Yeah. Correct. It doesn't end until they get dropped off, whether it's a teacher, a custodian, whatever, a lunch lady. But they're stepping into the gap where they see the need.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, these are folks that have their own problems. They have their own challenges, their own families. And frankly, they're underpaid, right? So, I mean, they don't always have that extra money that they'd love to have to give kids, but they find a way to make it work and get them what they need. And you know, it's amazing. It makes my heart warm to think about it. It also breaks my heart when my wife comes home from her school system.
Yes.
And she kind of rides from school to school. And as a mental health professional working in the school system, she sees a lot of these challenging cases. And it's true, that just breaks your heart, you know, to hear about how bad some kids have it. Of course, she doesn't share, you know, confidential details of kids' situations with me, but I can see the toll it takes on her to hear some, you know, tough stories day to day. What are some things that you think we could improve as a community to help support you educators, whether it's the teacher, the bus driver, whoever? I mean, what are some things we can do? Like, for example, in my case, I'm a parent, I'm a local business owner. You know, I wear several hats as a professional, as an injury attorney, et cetera. What are things we can do that you see that would help the school system and eventually, you know, most importantly, help the kids?
You know, Parker, that you know, there's a you know, we get school performance scores, and you know, we're 30 some odd schools in Tangipahoa Parish, and we have quite a few schools that are D's and F's. I mean, let's just be honest. Our state's ranked, I think, 47th as a whole, and I think that, and you know, and I'm going to say it, our employees are doing, again, everything they can. We can get better. We can move. What we're lacking today is home for these kids to where they're held accountable for their actions or their schoolwork or their homework or their materials or their supplies they're supposed to have at school, or they stay up half the night on their phone and they come to school and they're sleepy and they just don't care, and no one's at home encouraging them. And I think the best thing that we can start now is like we got these Chromebooks. Mm-hmm. And so when these kids get home at night, we need to start some kind of after school program where we have a teacher in every grade throughout our parish flip on that Chromebook at 5 o'clock every day. And that student can log into that site as a fifth grader and say, okay, Miss Smith, I got fifth grade homework tonight. Can you help me with this problem or that problem? And, she could put it on the screen. Everybody can see it. Of course, pay the teachers to do it who are volunteering who want to do it.
Yeah.
Because some of these parents, if they can't help them at home, and if that's the problem, give them an opportunity to be held accountable.
Great idea.
One of my kids, did the report, left it in their bathroom. So as I was doing a bathroom check, you can check your kid's room. It's okay. You're still in charge, right? So I'm checking the bathroom and I see this report there. So I take a picture of it. I email the teacher and I say, look, can you give him some kind of credit tomorrow if he turns it in, even though it's late? And she responded back by, no, I'm going to give him full credit because out of 25 kids, he's only the fifth one that did it.
What?
And I'm going to tell you something.
1/10 of the kids? Wow, that's shocking.
You can blame the school system for all the failing schools we have, but until we get this message that your house is just as important as the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Because it's a partnership between the school system and the parents and the community and the student. And if it's not working right, you're going to have, because kids in that
You're right. And that education starts in the home. And I get it that everybody's got their own challenges. Not everybody's life is, easy as mine, for example.
Right.
But we do have to hold parents accountable as well as, teachers
what we got going on in the state now is these vouchers or these educational savings account, which these special interest groups are pushing, that everybody in the public school system could take that MFP money and take it to another school, a private school, a charter school, or homeschool. Instead of the MFP money coming to your parish, you get to take that money in a check or a credit card and you go pay your tuition. And that's a movement now. And I'm going to say this, and I know you were with John Bell Edwards at a conference recently, I hear, that you saw him or sat by him.
I did, yeah. I sat by him in California.
Y'all chatted. And I don't care if you like him or not, whoever you are, I don't care what kind of letters behind his name, Republican, Democrat, Independent, other. I'm not getting into John Bell shut our world down and put a mask on, but I'm going to tell you this. He vetoed 2 bills this spring that involve vouchers and educational savings account. And you need to tell Governor Edwards, thank you, because that's going to destroy public school. And it's going to end up destroying the northern end of our parish, because without Midway and the Talbany Middle and the Talbany Elementary and Neeson and the independent school system, the northern end of our parish is hanging on now, and our school system is keeping people in those communities and those events. And if we start letting our kids leave with the MFP money and go to a private school, and listen, let's talk about Sue Courtney for a minute at Courtney Christian Center. There's no one I respect more in education than Sue Courtney. She's amazing. And it's not about private schools versus public schools. It's about keeping public schools alive. And and I'm shocked and really disappointed in some of our people who represent us in Baton Rouge who support educational savings accounts. And one more thing about that, Parker, I can get fired up about this.
No, really? I just got finished about how this isn't a political show and you're on your soapbox, but preach on. I'll let you go.
One more thing. I lived beside a family that had 4 kids going to private school. The other family had 3 kids going to private school. The family behind me had 2 kids going to private school all at the same time. Wow. And if you're in private school right now,
I think, hey, dear viewers, that lets us know Randy lives in a rich neighborhood.
Hey, if you're in a private school now,
right,
this doesn't apply to you. It's kids who are going to public schools now. So you might get your tuition paid by MFP, but if you've been sending your kids to 8 years of private school, you still going to have to pay.
Oh, so yeah, year 9 is not, you get no help with this.
You get nothing.
Just for the kids that are moving over. Okay.
Keep public. Okay, here's my solution. Help the public schools. Come out with ways to make us better. Support families who need the help. Support our kids with special needs. And in our schools now, give them additional resources. Don't let them just leave because you're blaming our Tangible Parish school system for the failures. And I'll raise my hand and say, okay, I'll take some of the responsibility. I agree. Put it on us. We're getting better. We need to get better. But half the responsibility is on the families and the students. They don't want to take the test. They the one gives us the scores. So it's a partnership, man. And I think people are trying to.
And I think our viewer here and former guest, Mandy, puts it in perfect perspective. She says all the puzzle pieces have to fit together. And she's right. The student, the teacher, the parent, the community, we've all, and the legislature, which you mentioned. So that's a great point. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's turn back a little bit, talk about your career in teaching, because before we move, from that, I would like to get a few, you talked about how you got started and, about all these places you've been, things you've done. Why don't you give us an example of things you loved about teaching, coaching, being an educator? And then on the flip side of that coin, I'm going to follow up and ask you about things that you didn't love, things that were challenges, or maybe things that broke your heart or pissed you off or whatever. But let's start with the positive stuff. What did you love about 30 years working in education?
Parker, there's nothing better than you having knowledge about a subject or anything and being able to transfer that to someone who doesn't know that topic or that subject or that material. And then they get it all of a sudden. They get it. And you're sitting there in that room and they say, or they say something to you about the class, and I remember the story, and she was such a precious child in Hammond East Side Upper. I mean, these kids, some of these kids are so precious. And they said, Mr. Bush, I did everything I could do. I gave it everything I got. I stayed up late. I studied. I did it. I tried. I prayed. I did everything. And she goes, and look, and it was like a C+. And you couldn't help but just hug her and say, yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
She gave everything that she had.
Yeah.
And then there's these other students who you go, man, don't you realize that you got such a great opportunity here, and you're going to need this school, and you're going to need what this teacher's telling you. And one day you're going to realize that, you're wrong the way you're treating her, the way you treat in class. And these LEAP test scores would come out, and you could hear this crying all down the hallway because they opened up the envelope and it said they made approaching basic or needs improvement, and you got to go to summer school. And I think that was the most heartbreaking thing. And and I spent,
that's got to be a challenge.
I spent, let me say something. I spent 8 years at the Florida Parish Juvenile Detention Center, going on a sometimes weekly basis to have church with the kids back in the day. And I would look at these kids, and some of them were from our school system, and they would say, Mr. Bush, you were right. School wasn't so bad. I mean, she
they learned that
bad.
lesson too late. But wow, that's tough.
And I want to say this too, because something positive. Jake Bailey, former school board member, called me on the phone and said, Randy, anybody wants to go to the detention center? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I started going, and before I stopped, I got my church, Eagle Heights Community Church. And for the last 22 years, somebody from Eagle Heights has been going on a monthly basis to Florida Parish Juvenile Detention Center, having church because of one phone call that Jake Bailey made to me 22 years ago. So don't think that one encouraging word to somebody could change their life forever. And so as an educator, thank God that they're out there so much, and they dedicate their life, and there's so many positives that happen. But that girl's story, you could see it in her eyes, man. Yeah. Everything I had, I gave it. And Mr. Bush, aren't you proud of me?
That's powerful, man.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. So I can't think how many times I cried in the school system.
I bet that was super rewarding. Speaking of the importance of the church, great educators. We've got a great Christian lady who happens to be a heck of a teacher out here, and Miss Donna Bassett here, who has commented. Miss Donna says that we're two fine gentlemen, and she says thanks. Miss Donna, thank you for listening to the show. Her husband was the pastor at my wife's church for years, and they're just a great couple. We used to love doing dinner with them, and just visiting with them in fellowship. But she's been teaching in the Livingston school system for many years, and you're right, Randy, that it's so important. It's a difficult path to navigate legally, with Christian faith and public schools, and today's not the time or place to figure out the exact details of that, but it is important.
But you bring up two more people who are actually incredible educators in our area.
Who's that?
Was Mary Beth Crevetta and Danny Williams.
Yeah,
I worked with both.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned with them, because they're two incredibly important people in my life. Both were my teachers at Ponchatoula High School. They went on to be successful administrators, principals, etc. But I'm blessed now to work with Danny Williams. In his retirement, he works with my law firm as our chief administrative officer and does a great job. Let's keep him in our prayers. I think he's probably flying to Scotland as we speak. He's on vacation. And Mary Beth is just the best. Her husband Kevin too, who taught my brother Bree, is that they lead our Sunday school group at First Baptist Church here in Ponchatoula.
Yeah.
And they are just the best examples. Their son Greg worked for me for 4 or 5 years, and I got a great window into what great parents they were through that.
Absolutely.
I've only known them as teachers, and they're just phenomenal people. But you're right. They were big assets to this community, and Ponchatoula has just had a ton of educators. You mentioned Schrader Dufresh. We have some great young ones coming up. We had Eloise Hayden on our show last week, Dr. Hayden, or maybe a week before. I lose track of my time.
Yes.
She's the new principal at the junior high
school.
Very promising. She's clearly brilliant and talented, and people in the
she's wonderful, man.
Yeah,
she's
thinking
really
her praises. We had Trey Muse on the show here, Marshall Muse III, who was at DC Reeves last year. He's like 23 years old, setting the world on fire. I mean, there are great educators, and we need to do more to recognize them.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that you kind of shine a light on so many of these talented folks that are doing great things.
Well, that's who I've worked with over the years, and as you can tell, I've been around some of the best, man. I mean, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
These people are incredible, academic, just super people, and had really some great stories to tell about, their past and their family and their children. And so I'm just hoping as we get older, we retire, we pass this thing on.
Yeah.
We got some really good young ones coming up, and great educators are still working. And I'm just proud to be a part of our education system.
Yeah, part of that legacy, part of that long line.
I'm going to fight to keep it going too.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because you're at a stage in your life. You mentioned, your kids going to school, making great ACT scores. You don't have to be living in Ponchatoula. I mean, you really never had to live here, right? You never had to come back home. But, we all know it's a lot harder to move your kid out of his sophomore year, say at PHS. But it's my understanding you and your wife are really committed to sticking around here, improving this community, working to do it, whether it's through public service and elected office or as a volunteer. My question is just kind of, why Ponchatoula? Why did you choose to come back here, raise your kids here, and stay here now as your kids move into their next chapter, and you move into transition and into kind of an empty nest phase? Why Ponchatoula? What's it that's so special about this community that keeps you guys here and keeps you active and invested?
When I did spend 2 years. I lived in the city limits of Albany. When I first got hired, I wanted to show that community I was committed, and I went there. And before I transferred back to Ponchatoula, it's just something about it that moved me back to where I was from in Pumpkin Center. And but it's such a good question, and I think I think some of the answers we did it. I mean, the July 4th, raising that flag, seeing those flags in the cemetery, the Strawberry Festival, the Gumbo Cook-Off that, I've been the MC for years, our Boosters Club, our school, these band concerts, people like James Square, really, makes me feel like music, and it is important, obviously, but to fight for people like him who gives his life for kids and music, and the fire department and Bree Layrisson in the police department. How many times have I told Bree, as my kids traveled back and forth through this town to go to school, I felt so comfortable knowing he was the chief of police. And then all the people that you've had on your show that I mentioned before, all these young people who seem like came from nowhere, Parker Layrisson, Jeff Leicester, Kevin Rayford,
right.
Chance Edmonds. I mean, let's just look at the Janet King. I mean, man,
it would have been funny to be at a PHS in the 90s when the four of us were all there together at the same time. Nobody would believe any of the success we've had.
I mean, and going, cool. And just something about going to Paul's Cafe, or my favorite store in town is Boney's. I mean, come on.
Oh,
Boney's gives me chill bumps. So, maybe
I've been there. You can tell. Look at this boy. I like to eat. I've been to Boney's already once today, and it may not be my only trip of the day.
But you know what? I'm gonna relate this to Boney's. Boney's is a great store. It's a clean store. It's got great
family that owns it too. By the way, the Boning family, they're excellent.
But if you bring no money to Boney's, Parker, what are you going to get? If you bring nothing as a student to school every day, you know what you're going to get?
Right, the same. So
we need your help, and we need your help as a student, as a family, to help us. But why do I stay here? I think and it's a big area, and I love Amy. I go to church in Tickfall, and Eagle Heights. I've been there for 20-something years. I started my career in Natal, Benny.
Yeah.
So Independence, we just made the announcement about Independence having the new magnet vocational school there, which is going to be something incredible. I mean, it's going to be unreal. So
tell us about that. It sounds like an exciting project.
Well, we took the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We moved the 7th and 8th grade to high school and gave them their own little wing. We moved the 5th and 6th back to the elementary school. So we opened that school up, and we're gonna have them, make a long story short and break it on down. It's going to be a school where you can take advanced placement classes, dual enrollment, but also a vocational school, to where if we can find, and we need this in the north end of our parish to save our towns, we need a Medline up there, a couple of them. And we need to ask them, what do you need from your employees? Because it's so hard to find employees and train them. And they say, well, Randy, this is what we need. Well, look, you come to this school, our new school, and we'll train our seniors from Manchac to Kentwood. And anybody can go to the school, Parker, parish-wide, in high school.
And it would seem like Independence is the perfect location because of where it is. It's right there, centrally located. I spend a lot of time there. I drop my kids off there every morning this week with my mother-in-law to watch them before they go back to school. And it's not that far from Ponchatoula, folks. It doesn't take long to get there.
And we can train your workforce right there. So when they graduate, you have your own. And if North Shore Technical Community College cannot do it, and Pathways and Jumpstart programs can't do it in high school, or Southeastern Louisiana University can't do it right here in East Fayette Patch, we'll do it at this school in Tangipahoa Parish School System. You'll have your employees trained by us. We just need to develop some economic, manufacturing, distribution centers in the north end of our parish, so we can get. We so packed down here, we can't hardly move anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So let's bring something up there and bring new life to Roseland, Meat, Independence, Natal, Mini, Tickfall. And I got these great ideas, but it seems like that's. And I have to give Miss Silly credit. And Dr. Fusel and Ron Jenko and that staff up there, Brett Steinbach, they're tops. And this is a great idea. We have $1.5 million to do it. And we took, we didn't take, we got Miss Gatos from Hammond High to be the principal of that school. And we might not ever see the total outcome in our lifetime, but it is going to be one of its kind in Louisiana. We started it right here in Tangipahoa Parish. And, man, I'm excited about the future for that.
That's a project to be proud of. What else should our viewers know about you, your background, your history? And what would you like to share?
Oh, man, Park, I'm kind of like, I like being humble. I know that's this crazy thing, right? But,
Well, I promised my wife I'd get home to help her with those kiddos around.
We got to go.
So we're nearing the end of the interview here, and I just want to ask you kind of an open-ended question, because I know, look, you and I, we're talkers. We could sit here for 5 hours and not be done, but I've done most of the directing of where we'd go with what. But I'd love for you to just have the open-ended opportunity to tell us anything about yourself you want to share.
Well, Parker, it's being a part of the community is it's standing up for what you believe in, your beliefs as a Christian person or whatever. And you're going to have people that obviously talk about you, and I guess with the social media thing that we're looking at now, and I say this a lot, I'm not the spokesman for Tangipahoa Parish Schools. TangiSchools.org is where you get information at.
Right.
Don't listen to your uncle's cousin's niece's girlfriend's neighbor. Go to TangiSchools.org. And since I've been elected school board member, you can always, all 7 billion people on the planet can email me at randall.bush@tangischools.org. That's randall.bush@tangischools.org. That's the only official, as an elected official, that's my official way to communicate with me. And everybody in the world can email me at any day. And I get emails every day from people. And so contact me. I just got a few more months to go. I didn't seek re-election next year because I feel like there's other opportunities. And but send me an email anytime you like, and and I'll answer it. And I'm open, and you can contact me anyway. If you got any questions about things, you need to ask me or email one of us before you get on social media and start saying, well, the school board's got metal detectors in the building and they protect themselves, but they don't have
consider the source, right?
And Parker, we don't have no metal detectors in the school office. Never had one at the school board building ever. But you get people who say that, and then people believe what you say, and then but they say no. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity. So there's a lot of people that talk about me all the time. And
hey, that means you're relevant. Haters are gonna hate, but you have shared your contact information with us. You've told us how properly to communicate with you. Well, Randy, I just want to thank you for all you've done. I mean, you have described here a history of service to our community, through our schools, through your church, through your personal activity as a dad, as a booster, you name it. And as a public servant, I know, coming from a family where I saw my dad get elected sheriff 6 times, I've seen my brother be elected chief of police 5 times. And I know that elected officials get calls all the time. They get criticism all the time. They sign up for it. It's okay as long as it's done right. That's what America's all about. But I know that not all jobs are created equal. And from the cheap seats where I sit, it seems like the school board is one of the most thankless jobs on earth. I've, been blessed to be friends with multiple school board members, you and Robin and Rose and Brett. Heck, Brett and I went to law school together. Consider all of y'all dear friends, and forgive those I left out, please forgive me. Going back to Miss Ann Smith and her great service to the board.
Absolutely.
All these great legends we've seen in action. But my point here is, y'all get a heck of a lot more angry people coming at you than, say, a marshal or a city council person or a parish councilman would. And anyway, so I really admire that you stepped up, because you knew what you were getting into. Not everybody that runs for school board knows what they're getting into, but you had been a teacher, a coach, an administrator, a daddy, a booster. And so, you knew what slings and arrows were coming your way. So I think it makes it that much more admirable that you did it. So for your time today, Randy Bush, thank you. For your service to our community, many thanks. And to our viewers, thanks for sticking with us. We will be back here next week. We've got.
Hey, Parker, before we leave,
go ahead, Randy.
I just want to say one more thing. Since none of these hot shots we talk about have a picture on your wall, is it possible you could take my picture and hang it on your wall next to your plaques? And I'd appreciate that.
Hey, you got it. Right after the show, we will do it. We need an offset. Can you see this pretty gal up here? I've got Beauty on this. We need Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
So,
hey, go take care of your children and have a good night.
Thank you, Randy. You have a good one. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.